Hello and welcome to my corn patch. Homegrown corn slathered in butter has always been a favourite of mine, and I suspect a favourite of yours too, which makes poorly filled cobs all the more frustrating. Then let's do something about it. Want to know how to get the very best full cobs of corn from your garden? Then watch on for my essential tips to the most perfect and oh so delicious crop. If corn doesn't get properly pollinated, it can't produce those delicious creamy kernels that we're after. It's as simple as that. So to find a solution to this problem, let's first look at the basics of corn pollination. Corn is actually a type of grass, and like other grasses, the flowers are wind pollinated. Plants produce separate male and female flowers, with the male flowers, called tassels, sitting right up at the top of the plant. Up here, they can catch the wind, and that enables the pollen to drift down to the rest of the plant. The female flowers are located further down the plant and are what will eventually form your cobs of corn. The female flowers have protruding silks, whose job it is to intercept some of the pollen drifting down from the tassels above. Remarkably, each strand is responsible for pollinating one kernel of corn. So to get a fully filled ear of corn, you're going to need every single strand to be pollinated. Pollination is very much a numbers game. Something in the region of 2 to 5 million pollen grains are produced by each tassel. That's over 1,000 for each strand of the silk. And it only takes one pollen grain, remember, to pollinate one piece of silk. And yet, perfect pollination is far from a given. Farmers achieve much better pollination because of course they're growing on a much bigger scale. Rows and rows of corn nestled together cheek by jowl and swaying in the wind. It's going to mean no problem at all with pollen reaching the female parts lower down. Gardeners, however, don't have it so easy, but we can help ourselves by growing in a block formation rather than long rows. Now, something like 97% of the pollen that gets onto the silks comes from other neighbouring plants. So if you think about it, planting in a long row is greatly reducing your chance of pollen being intercepted. By growing in a block like this, well, it increases the chances quite significantly. I've planted my corn here about, 14 to 16 inches, that's 35 to 40 centimetres apart in both directions. But most gardeners won't be planting more than, say, 10 to 50 plants. I think I've got about 15 or 16 here. So planting in a block certainly helps, but really we need to take another step. So let's look at that. The tassels are at their peak when the anthers dangling down from them are a rich, creamy yellow. At this point, every time the plant is disturbed, it'll knock them and release that pollen in little clouds that'll drift down to the female parts down below, and we can use this to our advantage. If conditions are calm when the tassels are at their peak, just go around and simply tap and gently shake the stems to dislodge that pollen. This mimics the wind and will release clouds of the pollen to float down to the silks below. Now, the silks tend to mature a few days later than the tassels, and even silks on the same cob seem to mature in succession, starting with those at the base and then maturing to those at the tip of the cob. So repeat this whole process every day over a period of 2 to 3 days for as long as the tassels are viable to increase the chances of every silk being pollinated. The pollen becomes less viable over about 90 Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius. So if it gets that hot where you are, this is why pollinating in the morning is much better, because it's still cool. If you aren't around in the morning, then just wait till the evening to shake the stalks of your corn. To absolutely guarantee kernel-crammed cobs, you can also hand pollinate. To do this, carefully detach a tassel from the top of the plant. Then simply dust the tassel back and forth over the silks, taking care to cover every single strand. Repeat this process every few days, and again, take the time to reach all parts of the silks using fresh tassels each time. The silks themselves have a relatively high water content, so the best way to ensure that they actually emerge and are as receptive as possible to that pollen is to keep your plants really well watered. Corn is a relatively shallow-rooted crop, so give the ground a really thorough soaking if it's dry at least twice a week. The silks will dry out once their job is done, and then all that's left for you to do is to be patient and wait for everything to swell up ready for harvest. Eventually the silks will turn completely brown and brittle. Then, to tell if your sweet corn is ready to pick, gently peel back enough of the husk to expose some of the kernels beneath, then sink a fingernail into one of the kernels, and if the liquid that comes out is nice and creamy, well, you're ready to go. Absolute bliss. Sometimes we need to get creative to help things along in the garden, and pollinating our corn is definitely one of those cases. Now tell me, are you growing corn this year? And if so, what variety? Let me know down in the comments below. What are we up to next week? Well, with summer just around the corner, it's time for those pests to raise their heads inevitably. And there's one family of crops that seems to get affected more than any other, the brassicas. If you've had problems growing the likes of kale, cabbage and broccoli before because of caterpillars, pigeons and all the other pests, and you've given up, well, I've got some nature-friendly solutions that will hopefully encourage you to give this wonderful family of crops another try. Now, don't forget to drop this video a big thumbs up on your way out, check you are subscribed of course, and why not check out our other videos on corn. I will catch you next time.